glories to Shiguru and Shigoranga. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, welcome everybody. Maybe we have Bhagavad Gita. Okay, everything's here. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya
Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. All glories to the Samas devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Magantimirandasya Jananjana Chukshivamilitam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnuparaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mahakriyaya Mahaprabhu Kshatriyada Mushapurusha Omte Gana Sudasa Sudasa Bhagavan Krishna Bhagavan Vachansime Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. So I was requested repeatedly to speak about my own story, how I came to Krishna consciousness. Okay, this is about the mic, very humble, always bowing down. The best opportunity. You heard that in the spiritual world, there are no things. Everything is animate. So you can see the proof. Yeah. You know, it says, if people laugh at you, then you bring joy to people's lives. So it's not too bad. Sounds a little funny.
Yeah.
Like, you can do something about it. Yeah, I guess it's not really inspiring for me to speak about myself so much, because I've heard this story so many times, and it's really boring. But I suppose it's an inspiration for some devotees, because if someone like me can become a devotee, then you can be completely sure that Krishna consciousness has no limits. It's open to everybody. But we will read. It sounds like speaking from the well.
I think you have to move it farther away from the mic.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I don't think so. It's a setup. Whatever.
Setting for echo, I turned it down.
Yeah. You can just turn it off or something.
Again.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Is it better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
No, it's good. Good.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we'll read from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 40. contents of the Gita summarized, and it's connected to the subject. Yahapi krama nashasti pratyavaya navidyate swapamapyasya dharmasya triyate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Purport. Activity in Krishna consciousness or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of sense gratification is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activity finds no impediment, nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begun on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%, whereas in material activity without 100% success there is no profit. Ajamila performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There is a nice verse in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17. Tyaktva swadharmam charanam bhujam hare bhajan apaktotha patettatu yadi yatra kvava bhadram abhutam mushikim kavarta to bhajatam swadharmata. If someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part, and what can one gain if one performs his material activities perfectly? Or, as the Christians say, what profit a man if he gain the whole world yet suffer the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body. But work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of great cultured Brahmana or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one a further chance for elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. Nihaphi kramanavshasti pratyavayona vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So there is no loss in practicing Krishna consciousness, and Krishna consciousness is always beneficial for everybody, no matter how much or little we do. And I think the proof that Krishna consciousness is so powerful is that so many people take it up, even without planning it. I'm not sure how many of you were planning to completely dedicate your life to spiritual development. I was not. I had so many other plans. And when I've learned about the devotee's lifestyle, the first thought which came to my mind was, I can do anything in this life, but one thing I'll never do. I'll never become a Hare Krishna. So it's like never say never. there are so many cases, and I guess my case is the one out of thousands and probably millions. According to Vedic standards, I am not even qualified to have anything to do with Krishna consciousness. Because being born in Muslim family, naturally this means a family of meat eaters and cow eaters specifically. And so those who eat cows, according to Vedic concept, they are not even human beings. Of course, one thing I really hated that. I couldn't understand how it is possible to eat meat at all. But because it was so obvious that this thing lying on the plate is part of somebody's dead body. And to put it in the mouth was like a nightmare for me. But then the parents were insisting, no, you have to do it. It's good for you. And I would tell them, you know, you're making me feel embarrassed, so you have to leave the room and then I'll take. So they would step out of the room and I would chuck all the meat into the trash can. They would come first, they would be very happy, okay, he ate everything. But then they would look into the trash can, see the meat. They would become very upset. Next time, then I tried the same trick. I would tell them, you know, you have to step out of the room, and they were saying, no, you'll put the meat into the trash can again. I would say, no, I won't. So they would trust me, they would step out of the room. I would chuck the meat out of the window. And then someone would eat it up there. Some birds or cats or whoever. And then they would come back, see that there is no meat, so they would actually believe that I did it. Anyway, this was one thing for sure. You know, in Krishna consciousness, I was really happy with. Oh my God, I don't have to eat meat anymore. Such a relief, and you know, it's an opportunity to find out that actually I was right, that it's not the food to eat. And anyway, my family was religious, and I was taught to make some prayers, and I would actually have experienced that anytime I prayed, I would get response. So I was really confident that there is someone up there, for sure, who responds to the prayers. We call him Allah. And so I was pretty sure about the existence of God since my childhood. But I was always thinking, he is doing everything for me, but who is he? And where does he live, and what he's doing, and how he looks like? And the most important thing is that, why did he create me in the first place? What's my duty towards him? Or how can I reciprocate with everything he's doing for me? And I was trying to find some answers in different scriptures, Bible, Quran, but they're all so confusing. It's very hard to figure it out. Who is God? what is the soul, and many other questions. And when I was in my student years, I was thinking there must be some information available, and unfortunately it was atheistic state, Russia. I lived in St. Petersburg, and all the information, all the spiritual information was suppressed. And actually the only source of information was communist brochures or articles, and of course they were all very, very negative. But this was the only opportunity to find out. And I came one time across one booklet which was speaking about different cults, very dangerous cults existing in the Western countries, and they brainwash people, etc. And they do so many horrible activities. And I got this booklet and started reading it. And I've noticed that amongst all these different groups, one group was given like specially dark description. And you know, the article started with the statement that of all the cults, this is the worst of all, because all the people there are completely crazy. There is not one sane person there, because they don't even dress normally. They dress in, you know, men are dressed in bed sheets and women are dressed in curtains, and then they put dirt on their foreheads, and then men are shaving their heads but not completely. Some part of the head remains unshaven, and looking like that, they go out on the streets and start harassing people for money, trying to sell them books no one can understand. And when their attempts are not successful, in their frustration they start shouting very loudly, or sometimes murmuring to themselves meaningless words. And the words were Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It was kind of shortened version for whatever reason. They didn't even put the full Mahamantra in there. And I was thinking, this is interesting analysis, interesting description. I had no idea who the Hare Krishnas are, but because communists were my sworn enemies, and of course I understood that this article is very biased, and it was very obvious that it was not true, because if people are crazy, then the first sign of madness is that someone is mad, that people cannot follow discipline, right? But it was very obvious that these people described in the article, they did follow a discipline. They dressed in the same way and they did everything the same. And the statement that these words they chanted, shouted or murmured were meaningless words also didn't make any sense, because crazy people could say the meaningless words, but why do they say the same words? So it was very suspicious. So I thought this, and especially like just looking at the Hare Krishna mantra, I thought, no, these words must have some meaning. And then I've decided to find out more about it. And actually at that time, Beatles were very popular, and George Harrison, of course, and many other musicians, they actually sang Hare Krishna mantra. So I was really interested to learn what it's all about. It seems like a big thing in the Western world. And then I was asking my friends if they know anything about Hare Krishna, if we have any Hare Krishnas in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and they said, yeah, of course we have. Despite of the article claiming that none of the Hare Krishnas exist in the country. And so my friend said, yeah, I know some Hare Krishna people, and they have some books I could bring you to read. You can learn a little more. So he brought me, I think it was Easy Journey to Other Planets. And, you know, yogi is depicted there at the cover with chakras. And my friend had very little idea what the book is about. So he was basically pointing at the cover and saying, you know, like, just imagine when we achieve spiritual perfection, we wouldn't have to communicate verbally. We could communicate through these holes in the body in a telepathic way, something like that. And I was really interested in this kind of stuff. Telepathy and mind control, not controlling my mind, but controlling other people's minds. And I was thinking, well, this is interesting. So I started reading the book. Of course, it was very hard to understand it, because there were not much description of the techniques, how you can, you know, develop supernatural abilities. But there was a lot of mention of yoga, karma, reincarnation. It was very interesting. And then I told to my friend that there are plenty of references to Bhagavad Gita in this book. And so, any possibility to get Bhagavad Gita and read it. And he said, yes, they have Bhagavad Gita, but this is really dangerous, because if anyone would see me with Bhagavad Gita in hand, I could go to jail for many years. Because in Russia at the time, to possess Bhagavad Gita would mean at least 3 years in jail, and to give Bhagavad Gita to someone, distribute Bhagavad Gita, would be minimum 5 years, like that. And so, yeah, many devotees actually were imprisoned at the time. I didn't know much about it, but there was very, very heavy prosecution, and the reason is very obvious, because it was a communist state, and their idea was, you know, there is no God, period, right? And the whole thing was based on that. But Bhagavad Gita was very clear about it, especially chapter 16 describing demoniac characters. It says that demon is one who doesn't believe in God. And so naturally, they knew that. They knew what Bhagavad Gita says, so they didn't want people in Russia to read Bhagavad Gita by any means, right? They didn't want to be depicted as demons, which they actually were. And so, yeah, they tried to suppress it by, in all respects. And so, I said, but, you know, I want to see that book. He said, okay, I'll bring it to you, but make sure that no one ever knows about it. No one sees us, no one hears that I showed this book to you, I brought it. I just do it as a friendship, as a gesture of friendship, but make sure it's absolutely confidential. I don't want to go to jail for that. So anyway, we met in a secluded place, and he showed me Bhagavad Gita. I opened it up. It was so interesting. I decided that, I have to read this book. I told him, let me read this book, and I'll give you any money as a remuneration for your risk. He said, no, I don't want to risk. I don't want to go to jail, so I'm not going to give you Bhagavad Gita. And so he took it back. He said, I promised to show it to you, but you are not getting it. And then after that, for the next 3 years, I was like searching for Bhagavad Gita everywhere, but I could never find any copy. And I think after I already lost all hope that it will ever happen, I was walking down the street and one man approached and he said, I have some interesting spiritual literature if you want to read. And then I knew immediately that this Bhagavad Gita, and he pulled out Bhagavad Gita. I was so happy. And it didn't take me much to convince him to sell me Bhagavad Gita. I was very surprised that he charged me like some ridiculous amount for that, and ridiculously small. And then I got my own copy of Bhagavad Gita, and I was reading it and actually sharing with my friends some interesting passages from it. I lost some of the friends. One was working very, very hard, and because he was actually trying to immigrate, he was Jewish, and so he was working at 2 jobs at the same time, trying to make money. And I thought he will like the passage from Bhagavad Gita, and I just happened to read the passage. You know, the purport to that verse where Krishna speaks about 4 types of people who never surrender unto him. What's that? Namam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naranama. And so the first type is mudha, and of course Srila Prabhupada in the purport speaks about hard-working asses. Probably most of you do remember that purport if you ever came across it, because it's very graphical. How ass is, singing songs, etc. after the work and gets kicked in the face. And so I'm reading this purport to him, and I expect him to get excited about it, but then instead I see that he's getting more and more depressed. And then at the end he looks at me, he says, so your book says I'm an ass? I don't want to know you and your book anymore. So I lost him. But other friends were appreciative. So it was very different response to Bhagavad Gita every time. And one of our friends was son of some kind of minister, can't remember. His father had some high position in the government, and in Soviet time, in Russian time, in communist time, everyone lived a very, very modest life. But those who held governmental positions, they lived in extreme luxury. And so this boy would invite us into his home and would, show all the luxuries he has and give some expensive gifts, and trying to impress upon everyone how, aristocratic he is, etc. Very soft-spoken. Actually, he was also quite well educated. He knew different philosophies. He could hold a conversation on practically any topic. And I thought he would be a good person to discuss Bhagavad Gita with. And so I came to his house and I said, I have this very interesting book on ancient Indian spiritual philosophy called Bhagavad Gita. You probably read it. He said, no, I never even heard of it. I said, how come? It's so famous. He said, yeah, somehow. Never came across. And he wanted to see Bhagavad Gita, and it had underground, it was printed underground, so which added charm to it. And so he took it very respectfully into his hands and opened somewhere in the middle, and I guess he landed somewhere in chapters 9 or 10, where Krishna speaks about his opulences. And while he was like browsing through, I could see that his face was becoming darker and darker. And then at the end he was nearly shaking from anger. And he said, who is this Krishna? I said, well, Krishna is the Supreme Lord. And then he started shouting at me. He said, if Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and then he, added few bad words, which was like completely unimaginable. That we could never imagine he would ever do anything like that. It's like, it's almost the same like, President of America would start swearing or something like that in public. But that would be like hard to accept, right? So for us it was, like we couldn't imagine that he in his position would do anything like that, shouting and swearing. And he nearly threw the Bhagavad Gita in my hand. And for all of us, his friends, it was like he was ghostly hunted or something. Or he just lost his marbles. It appeared like. And we left and we were talking what happened to him. But then it was very confusing. But then later I realized what happened. Because he was actually thinking that he was God. And then he came across the real one. And so his envy just bursted out. He couldn't control himself. Actually, Srila Prabhupada mentions that Krishna consciousness, when it is applied to human society, is acting in a similar way to how lemon juice acts upon the milk, upon the boiling milk. Everyone knows that the milk divides into whey and curd. And so in the same way, the human society, when it comes in touch with Krishna, Krishna consciousness divides into divine and demoniac people. Those who have divine tendencies, they feel inspired to serve Krishna. Those who have demoniac tendencies, they feel inimical towards Krishna. So the real colors become manifest. Somehow Krishna consciousness has this polarizing effect. And actually you can see that in the history of the world, in the last 50 years, since Krishna consciousness started spreading, you will see there is a lot of polarization happening. And so it's just a natural effect of Krishna consciousness. Those who want to advance, they advance, and those who want to degrade, they degrade much faster than before. That's why it's happening. It's actually everything what's happening in the world, happening because of Krishna consciousness. Because we spread Krishna consciousness, believe it or not. And so, anyway, many friends were very enthusiastic about Krishna, but not many wanted to follow. But there was one friend of mine who was very interested to practice, well, at least chant Hare Krishna or sing Hare Krishna, whatever, and study books, and yeah, he also became vegetarian, and we would tell everybody about Krishna. And when I've started chanting, yeah, actually it was very interesting that I haven't started chanting immediately, but the more I've read Bhagavad Gita, and the more I was coming across Maha Mantra, because Srila Prabhupada actually one time was challenged by someone, can't remember who it was, but someone said, Swamiji, you wrote such a difficult books on spiritual philosophy, right? Not even all the scientists can understand these books. But then you telling your disciples to go out on the streets and distribute these books just to anyone and everyone passing by. How in the world do you expect laymen to understand these books? And Prabhupada laughed at the question. He said, of course I don't. I know they won't understand, but for this reason I put the name of Krishna so many times in my book, and moreover, many times I put full Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in my books, and they would continue stumble upon that name of Krishna, and especially Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and they would become purified by that. And when they will become purified, they will start understanding these books. So there is actually mystery behind understanding Krishna conscious philosophy, and it actually depends on the holy name. It's not by our intellectual effort. No one can understand Krishna conscious philosophy by the intellectual effort. Even the most educated people are puzzled. How can you understand it? But then when people chanting, and when people come across the holy name, they become purified. And the more they become purified, the more clear it becomes. And so, but this was one of my first questions when I was coming across Hare Krishna mantra, quoted in the books for so many times. And I was thinking, does the author thinks I'm a complete moron who cannot remember like 3 words
Oh.
and he has to repeat them so many times? Why it's not enough to repeat it once, right? Because I didn't know the reason Prabhupada did it. But then, yeah, the more I was coming across the mantra, the more I was becoming purified. And the easier it was to accept what Srila Prabhupada writes in his books. And then, some of my friends who knew about the devotees, they were saying, yes, that this mantra is really powerful. If you chant this mantra, everything becomes possible in your life. That Krishna is really there and he responds to the chanting of Hare Krishna. It's like Krishna's personal number to connect with him. And I tried that and it really worked. There were so many instances. And after quite a few tries, I became so confident that basically, like anything you want in life, you just have to start chanting Hare Krishna and anything can happen. Even the most impossible thing. I developed such a confidence in that, and so did my friend. And we decided, okay, what do we want to do with the Hare Krishna mantra? And then we decided, okay, we want to leave this country and we want to escape and go to India. And it was not possible to officially travel because the country was really behind the Iron Curtain, and to have a permit, to obtain the permit to travel to any other country was next to impossible. And there were so many bars. And especially for me, because I was anti-communist, and I was like a kind of freedom fighter against the communist rule. And I was nearly put to jail a few times for that. And it's like political crime, so the consequences are very heavy. So no one would let me out of the country for sure. So we decided to escape, and we traveled. You know, we looked at the map, where is the good place to cross the borders, and we found that the borders with India, they don't really exist. There is no border between India and former Soviet Union, which ended with Central Asian countries. But there is a stripe of Afghanistan and Pakistan land between former Soviet Union and India. And on the map, that stripe, those two stripes were quite small. So it seemed like, okay, like a couple of inches. And then we're in India. But we failed to realize that in real distance it means, you know, like nearly 2,000 miles. And also not the plain land, but mountains. And these are actually Himalayas. So we had to cross Himalayas. But, you know, we were so convinced about the power of Hare Krishna mantra. We thought, it doesn't matter, we'll still do that. And we went hitchhiking all the way from the north of Russia, St. Petersburg, all the way to the south, to Central Asia, and chanting Hare Krishna mantra all the way, and we would get a lift, and someone would give us place to stay, and someone would help us financially. So it was like everything was taken care of. It was so amazing. And we traveled long distance like that. And when we arrived to the Asian countries, and then we decided, okay, we have to prepare ourselves for our big trip across the mountains. And I had an idea to visit local museum of the mountains, you know, what's in there in the mountains. And there they had taxiderms of all the animals in the mountains. And they wore like tigers, leopards, wolves, bears, and they were all so huge, and their fangs were so big, And I was thinking, wow, it looks really dangerous up there. But anyway, we were quite determined. And regardless of that, we decided that we should start preparing for the trip. It's quite interesting how much faith is generated right in the very beginning of the path to Krishna consciousness. I think Krishna gives a lot of interesting experiences to help us become convinced that Krishna is real. And yeah, one experience I had, I was going to the shop to buy something. Yeah, I think we figured out that we would have to go like long time without, and there would not be food supply in the mountain, so, and it would be pretty chill out there. And so I've decided I want to buy like chocolate, because it's kind of easy to carry and high calorie food to eat on the way. So I went, I think I went to buy chocolate or something. And then, yeah, we also figured out that we need mountain gear, right? And I went and I bought really, really serious mountain gear, which consisted of, laundry ropes and tennis shoes. So, like, I was fully prepared. Chocolate, laundry robe, and tennis shoes. I was ready to conquer the mountains. Anyway, I was 17, I think that was understandable. Because at that age, you don't really think straight. And, yeah, my friend was 18, so he was really, really mature. Very senior, experienced. And so I was going to the shop, and then I was passing through some really troublesome area. I didn't know about it. And then I was suddenly surrounded by a gang of youngsters who were actually even younger than me. But they were like really aggressive, and their ringleader is that anyone who is passing through that place has to give us all the money. And at that time, I developed so much confidence and enthusiasm in chanting Hare Krishna mantra that I was chanting Hare Krishna all the time, without beats. I didn't even know that I was supposed to use beats. But I was either chanting orally, or when I was not doing that, the mantra would reverberate in my mind all the time. And if you do that, then an interesting phenomena occurs, that you start perceiving the events as real, but you perceive them as if it's like a theater, and everyone's playing some roles in the theater, but they are not the roles, they're just actors. So something like that, this is how the perception changes if you always chant Hare Krishna, like non-stop. And so for me, I didn't take anything serious. For me, it was like watching some drama all the time, or comedy, or whatever. And so these guys, they surrounded me, and they were trying to like scare me and give me all your money, etc. But I was thinking, what's this theater all about, Why these guys are playing the roles of villains, trying to scare me. And I was looking at them and smiling. Because for me it was like watching a movie, so I was smiling. And the ringleader got really confused. And because I was supposed to get scared, right? According to this scenario, but I was not so. And he said, "Do you think I'm joking?" But I'm not. I'm that serious here. And he pulled out a blade and he put it to my throat. He said, "Look, I'll cut your throat if you don't give your money. So you choose what you want to do. You either give your money or I'll cut your throat." And he even said, "Look, if I cut this vein, this artery, actually no one would be able to save you. You'll just die in a few minutes because of loss of blood." And he kind of, put the blade to my throat. And then I looked at his hand, and his hand was shaking. I guess it's not so easy to cut someone's throat. And then I looked at his eyes, and he couldn't look straight at me. He was like turning his eyes away, and I was thinking, this is really strange. I mean, he was trying to scare me, but he himself shakes in fear, and he can't even look into my eyes. He's scared more than me. And literally, this became so funny that I started laughing. Looking into his eyes and laughing at him. And he was so confused. He looked at all his friends, and he said, "I think he's completely mad. Let's run away from here." And then they dispersed in different directions. I was thinking, it's not even a theater, it's kind of circus. Not sure what it was. But anyway, I have my business to mind, I have my shopping to do, so I just went on. And then I came back, it was all set, and I told my friend, "Okay, let's go." And we went up in the mountains. And yeah.
Which part of Soviet Union it was?
It was Uzbekistan, and the area was Fergana, as far as I remember, yeah. And then we started going up in the mountains, and we were actually determined that, okay, we're just crossing the mountains. It's really hard to imagine now however we could come up with such an idea. It was real madness. Anyway, we went up. And because we were completely convinced, as long as we chant Hare Krishna, nothing can happen to us, right? Krishna will always be with us, he will look after us, he will protect us. And so we went a little bit higher in the mountains, and then we saw one lady who was running very frantically and screaming for help. And we were asking, what happened? And she was saying, "I lost my husband here in the mountains, and he's so depressed. And I think he wants to commit suicide. Please help me to find him." And we were like, "Okay, no worries. We'll just start chanting Hare Krishna and we'll find the husband." And at that time we looked really strange. I mean, because we had long hair and beards, and we were like hippie style. We were looking like hippies. This was really unusual, especially for Central Asia. Because it was communist Russia, no one looked like that. So we started chanting Hare Krishna, and sure enough, went in some direction, and after very few minutes we saw the guy standing on the edge of the cliff, ready to jump. And we started shouting, don't worry, you don't have to take your life, because Krishna is here for you, he will look after you, he will sort out all your problems. And we started running towards him. And he looked at us and we looked so weird. And we were and we like had big smiles on our face. And we were saying something about Krishna. He got completely confused. I suppose he already forgot about, like suicide just by seeing us. And when we came running from both sides, we started like preaching to him, whatever we knew about Krishna conscious philosophy. And he was like, "Stop, please! I can't understand anything, because who is Krishna? Why he has to why he's supposed to, sort my problems? And who are you anyway? Can you explain it all to me? Properly? My house is actually not far from here, so let's go down and you'll be my guest and you'll tell me whatever you want to tell." So we went down. And we started explaining to him about Krishna. And then we were asking him, what made you decide to commit suicide? And then he said, "Wow, my life is completely messed up because I was working and my boss was a really, really corrupt man. And he was doing so many illegal things, and I tried to report to my superior on his activities. I thought, there will be an action taken against him, but I didn't know that my boss bribed that superior, and both of them took action on me, and they fabricated something against me and put me to jail, and I had to spend a year in jail. And after I came out, they made sure that I'm blacklisted, so I cannot have any work. I can't make any money, I cannot support my family, so I'm so desperate I wanted to commit suicide. And then he was saying, all these guys, communist leaders, they speak so nicely, but they're so corrupt, it's disgusting. And this is horrible country, and we realized, that he's completely safe, we can actually tell him everything we wanted to do. And he was asking us, who are you, why are you here, what are you doing here? And so we actually told him everything very openly, because we knew that he's not going to turn us in, for sure, to the police. And he said, "Wow, it's like you really think you will be able to cross the mountains like that, even with your Hare Krishna mantra." And we were saying, "Why do you think it's not possible?" And he said, "Well, it's, first of all, it's really, really cold up in the mountains. And you dress so lightly, you'll just freeze to death. But even if you don't freeze to death, the mountain trails are so narrow and covered with ice that even mountain goats, they slip and fall, and they break their necks and die. And how do you expect, without any experience, to cross all these hurdles?" But he said, even if you don't freeze, even if you don't sleep, even if you don't fall, then there are so many ferocious animals in the mountains. They're just waiting for someone to come there, and they're so hungry. But then even if you will escape all these, the fourth and the worst type of danger is actually border patrol. They do not stay there because there is nowhere to stay. But on their helicopters, they regularly fly around the borders, and it's all snow there, and if they see someone's, some human being moving there, and it's like in the open, there is nowhere to hide in the mountains. And so once they see any humans moving there, they know these guys are trespassing the borders, and they just shoot from the helicopter to kill. And once the people shot, they don't even bother to kind of land and retrieve the bodies. They don't care. They just leave the bodies there and fly away. So he said, practically you have no chance. And we listened to him, and we realized, okay, it seems to be much more difficult than we thought it would be. And then I was saying, so, but, what would you suggest? Is there any other way? He said, yes, I can suggest you an easier way. How to cross the borders. You would have to, get a job as a truck driver. One of you, if you have a license for driving trucks. And actually my friend had, funny enough. And he said, of course you have to trim your hair and look a little bit normal to, make sure that no one suspects you. You would have to sacrifice that part. And then there is actually one motorway which goes around the mountains and goes straight into India. I think it ends in Srinagar, which is the first, big town in India on the other side of Himalayas. I think it's in Kashmir, right?
Yeah.
So, and he said there is a motorway, and so I even know one truck company, and they take the freights across that motorway. And so once you're there, you can just turn on this motorway on your truck, and you should drive with a high speed and break through the border. There is a border there. And you would have to break through the border and keep driving straight along that motorway. He said, of course, there will be pacifists. So, we were peace lovers, and we were not into anything like that. So we thought, okay, it doesn't seem to be, it's something we want to do, or something we could even do. So we thought, okay, possibly Krishna is sending us some signal that we should not really try this. So, yeah, then we came back, and after a while, actually, my father wanted me to do business. No, actually what happened, I came back, and because I already had a history of kind of political agitation, and KGB, which is like CIA in this country, but I guess it's not CIA, it's FBI, but KGB, they do both functions for, in this country it's divided, FBI and CIA, but KGB covers both functions. So they already were after me. And so I was actually hoping that, okay, we'll escape and then I'll be safe. But then I came back, and I had to deal with it. My parents got some notifications that your son is under the investigation on the political crime, and so if he won't stop his activities, his propaganda, anti-communist propaganda, will have to put him to jail. And so my parents were very concerned, and they were saying, you should do something to show to them that you're improving, your character is improving. And so the best thing was to, you know, to agree to get drafted into the army. And so I did that, but then in there I haven't stopped. I was a pretty ruthless guy. I continued my propaganda even in the army. And so they actually arrested me, and they told, okay, you had your last chance, you didn't use it, so we'll take an action on you now. And the action was supposed to be really heavy. Not even jail, but they were supposed to place me like heavy offenses, and they were like so badly tortured there that, you know, like most of them wouldn't survive it, and if they would survive, they would end up like being crippled for a life or something like that. So I was thinking, well, this is like really horrible. And then I started praying that, I mean, some Russian devotees who lived through the history, they can confirm that that change, it started I think in 86, was it 86, Perestroika? Yeah, that, or 85, that there was no indication that it would ever happen, right? It just happened suddenly. Suddenly two political leaders came together and they decided, okay, let's go back to democracy. Let's stop communist propaganda, and there was no indication that it will ever happen. And it was a big surprise for everybody, for the whole country. And I was thinking, why did it happen at all? And then again, many years later, I learned when Srila Prabhupada came to Russia. And for him, you can just imagine Srila Prabhupada living in India his whole life. And in India, people are very personal. If you smile at someone, they will smile back at you, right? And in America and Western countries, it's also there. And this culture is there, you know. But not in Russia. In Russia it was not like that. So when Srila Prabhupada came to Moscow, and he looked at people, and everyone was completely depressed, the whole country. You just imagine, you know, you're surrounded by people, and you look at them, you smile, and they don't smile back. They just look at you. As if you've stolen something from them, right? So, and Prabhupada was like, what's going on here? What happened to these people? And everything was so kind of gray, and, you know, everyone was so depressed, and no one had, like, there were no even cars, private cars. Everyone had to take public transportation, and there was nothing available, even like basic food. You couldn't even buy bananas or apples. Like, people would have to wait, queuing up, you know, wait in line to buy bananas. And I remember that because that was in my childhood too. Like for 4 or 5 hours. And there was not even guarantee that you'll get your bananas. Because by the time, you know, your number comes up, all the bananas are finished. And you just wasted 5 hours. And still no bananas. So, like that. And I still remember I was a child, and I was sent out like 4 in the morning to wait in line to buy a little milk. because if you go a little later, you may miss it altogether, and there is no milk. And so Prabhupada landed in that circumstances, and everyone's depressed. There's nothing in the country, and not even anything good to eat. What to speak of the rest of the stuff? And huge, people queuing up for everything. Anything, like to buy shoes, to buy shirt, or even T-shirt. You have to wait for a very long time. There was some things available without, having to queue up. But I think these things were like vodka. You can easily buy that. Canned meat and bread. That was about it. The rest of the stuff you had to wait and really struggle. And Prabhupada took a walk in Moscow, and he saw all this, and he said, "Wow, this is really amazing." And then there was a big line at the Red Square, and Prabhupada was asking, "So what is this line? What people are queuing up for?" And then Shyamasundar Prabhu said, "Okay, let me go and see. What are they selling there?" And so he came back, he said, "Srila Prabhupada, they don't sell anything. They're queuing up to see Lenin's body in the mausoleum, in the tomb." And Prabhupada said, "What? They're queuing up to see Lenin's dead body? Waiting for so many hours?" Shyamasundar Prabhu said, "Yes." He said, "These guys are crazy. They don't understand the difference between dead and living body. What's the use of seeing his dead body?" But then, reportedly, he said, "Oh, I know why they're queuing up. They want to come and see that he's really dead. Want to make sure. Because this kind of guy who created this kind of circumstances for millions of people, for the entire country, better he remains dead." They want to really see that he is dead. And then his comment was that this is the proof. This is what's happening in the country when people are deprived of their connection with God. Right? They're not allowed to worship God. And this is what happens as a result. And then he actually predicted. He said, "But when the people of this country will start chanting Hare Krishna, this demoniac system will collapse on its own." And sure enough, what did it take? 71, 80, 86? Yeah, 15 years. So 15 years later, when it actually happened, when enough people in the country started chanting Hare Krishna, the whole thing collapsed. And it collapsed at the right time, at the right moment. So even before I started practicing Hare Krishna, Krishna consciousness seriously, Srila Prabhupada already saved my life, literally, by his coming and setting things in motion in 71. And by the time I needed it the most, it happened. So it was like one of the big Krishna conscious miracles in my life. That I literally owe my physical life to Srila Prabhupada. Because without him I would be finished. And so, after I came out and I continued reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and later on I joined the movement. And so it was 89. And there were a few other things happening, but we don't want to take much more time. So I hope it was okay?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. So, took time. So, shall we stop there?
How did your parents react when you and your friend tried to escape?
Oh, well, I mean, I was such a character that I always did whatever I wanted and really took advantage of being the only child in the family. So my parents were like completely dominated by my, desires, and so they knew that if I really want something, no one can stop me. And but it helped because after I started practicing Krishna consciousness, I actually joined after a short time as well, because they realized that if they don't join, if they don't start practicing themselves, they would lose me altogether. So they didn't want to risk that. So. And they both got initiated by the same spiritual master, Shavendra Swami. Both got Brahmana initiations, and my father's already passed away. He did quite a lot of services, built a temple in Russia because he's professional in construction. And mother is still alive, she's quite old, and she's spending most of the time in Mayapur. And having her place in Moscow as well. So. All right. Yeah.
May I request you, because I think it will be inspiring, may I request you to share how there is some place, some university, I forget where this is, but you shared this last time when you came. There's some university where they have, the professors have declared that the Hare Krishnas, like something about our philosophy, it's like the topmost or something like that. It's like through I think it's interfaith, something you do with interfaith in some university, prestigious university in Israel, maybe. I can't recall.
Oh no. This is a professor from Israel University. Yes, he's Jewish, and he has students and their relatives, and they all live together and practice their faith. But then they really liked us, and they also like doing very high-profile design business, and they liked us so much that it was really confusing. That they were saying you should do Rasayana in Jerusalem, and you should build a big temple in Tel Aviv, and etc., etc. And I was like, why are you so interested in our development? Because you're Jewish and you're religious Jews, you're practicing your faith very seriously. Why do you want to invest so much in us rather than in your own faith? And he said, because after studying all the scriptures of the world, and he is actually professor of Judaism in Jerusalem University. He said, after studying all the scriptures of the world, and after meeting every single religious leader on the planet, we came to a conclusion that the only tradition which can help this country is Hare Krishna. So this was quite amazing statement. All right, so yes.
How you develop like such a at a very young age, at the age of 17, how you develop like such a strong faith on Hare Krishna Mahaprabhu?
Well, because I was told, I was interested to know more about God and go deeper into my spiritual life, basically develop relationship with God, which Krishna consciousness offers, and there is nothing like that anywhere else. And I was told that if I chant Hare Krishna mantra, then Krishna will manifest, and so he did. I had so many experiences back then and throughout all these years, and so if there are so many proofs, then naturally faith develops. And I suppose that this is the power of Krishna consciousness, that Krishna is real and he manifests himself to anyone who is chanting his holy names in a very obvious way. And so that's why it's not easy to practice Krishna consciousness, and everybody knows that. Like Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness is difficult, but material life is impossible. So it's like we have the choice, between difficult and impossible. But even though it's so difficult, but because Krishna is real, despite of the difficulties, devotees still continue. So I think it's not just me, but everybody who comes across Krishna. This is what's happening. All right?
Did you face any animals? Or
Sorry?
Did you face any animals, like you mentioned during your travel to mountain? Did you face any animals? Or have animals?
Well, no, we didn't actually went high enough to see any animal, any like predators, but yeah. I think Krishna saved us, otherwise we would be dead. I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I would become a lunch for some tiger. Okay, Prabhu.
I was wondering, you went through so many difficulties, or difficult situations where you could where you depended on Krishna. In our case, Krishna is, we can say, by the mercy of Prabhupada and the devotees, we have books that are easily available, holy is easily available, association is easily available. So we don't take them, we take those things as granted. Whereas at least in your initial days, you took every moment or every opportunity, the books that devotees as very precious.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, how can I change my consciousness to have that kind of mood and come out of appreciating every moment and take the opportunity to take your stature of
Yeah.
books?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Actually, Prabhu, the host, Prabhu, he is worshipping Jagannath deities here in his house, and I was thinking, we just had Jagannath Rath Yatra, and Jagannath is very special deity, very special form of Krishna, as we know, and Srila Prabhupada made so much effort to introduce Jagannath to the whole planet. And it's actually interesting that Jagannath is the first and the most ancient interfaith deity of the world, right? Because everybody worships Jagannath. Vaishnavas, Mayavadis worship him, Sikhs are worshipping him, Buddhists are worshipping him, Christ's mission started from there. He has Muslim devotees, so pretty much everybody, tribal people, naturally, because this is where Jagannath came from, right? So Jagannath is natural personality who draws everybody, and we know that there are so many what do you call it, interesting elements connected to worshipping Jagannath, and one which I'm sure many of you heard is Navakalevara every 12 years or so. Jagannath is changing the body. Actually, it's not necessarily 12 years, it could be longer. So, but at a certain period, Jagannath has to change his body. And the new bodies have to be made out of really special trees, not just any tree, not even any neem tree, but the trees with the marks of Vishnu on the bark. Like each of these trees have to have Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma on the bark, and many other signs which indicate that this is Jagannath tree. And the devotees who go out and look for these trees, they have limited days. They have limited time to find the trees. You probably heard of Daityapatis, the brahmanas of that tribe, which was worshipping Nilamadeva from the start, and they still consider to be the topmost devotees of Jagannath even now. And so, actually, when they go out, what's the main mantra they chant to find those trees? That actually is Jagannatha Swami Nayana Padagami Bhavatume, right? Which is Lord Jagannath, O Lord of the universe, please kindly be visible in front of me, right? But you know what's the rule? If they would not find those 3 trees, they need to find 3 trees for all the 3 deities. And every tree has to have all these marks and signs. And if they will fail to find all the trees in time, you know what they have to do? All of them. And it's like everyone who belongs to this Daityapati category, all the brahmanas of the clan, everyone who is older than 18 and younger than, I think, 70, they have to go and search. And if they won't find the trees in time, all of them, they have to turn around and go to the ocean and jump into the ocean and finish their lives. Like commit mass suicide out of shame that they couldn't find those trees. So now just imagine what is their mood when they chant Jagannatha Swami Nayana Padakami Baba Tumme, right? Like when we chant that, it's kind of funny. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Padakami Baba Tumme, kind of joyful. Haribo, Haribo. But for them, it's like question of life and death. And so I was thinking this is a very good example of responsibility, they take in the service. And I think the complacency you are mentioning can be only neutralized by the responsibility. Commitment. That if you are committed, then that's, I think, the best antidote for the complacency, which is, I agree, very dangerous for our spiritual development. Because familiarity breeds contempt. That's very well known fact. And so once you are committed, then it's different. All right? Hare Krishna. Okay, last question, I think. We have to finish. If anyone had questions, yeah.
I was just wanting to ask that when you were trying to escape from Russia, so all you knew about Krishna was from Bhagavad Gita as it is and Easy Journey to Other Planets? Was it just from these 2 books?
We had Bhagavad Gita and few small books. At the time I joined, there was no Srimad Bhagavatam, no Chaitanya Charitamrita, just Bhagavad Gita and maybe 5 or 6 small books max. So that was it. There was Ishopanishad, Easy Journey, Bhagavad Gita, and a couple of other books. That was all we had. So when Srimad Bhagavatam started coming out, that was like amazing discovery. All right, so thank you all very much. I hope now you feel convinced that Krishna consciousness is open to everybody. Anyone can become Krishna conscious. So we'll finish here with a little kirtan, with your permission, if that's fine. Yeah?
Haribol, enjoy, yeah. Can you help get me out the harmony?
And because I'll be leaving tomorrow, and I won't be seeing most of you, I wanted to thank you all for coming and sacrificing your valuable time and encouraging me to share, even though I was not really interested to speak about myself. Because of your strong desire, I had to do that. So I'll be looking forward to see you again sometime in future. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Nitai Gaur Premanande. Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Samaveta Bhakta Brinda ki jai. So we should thank very much our host, Prabhu Madhav Prabhu. And I have this wonderful garland, and normally I feel very sorry for the flowers. But actually I have Giriraj on my neck, so this is Maha garland from Giriraj, and we want to offer it to Prabhu. Rivo! Rivo! Thank you. And there will be prasadam, and I'm sure. And you can start with Maha Prasadam from Giriraj. So those who are interested, you can come and have some Maha Prasadam.